Okay.
So we're doing my slice and make grid.
Yes, ma'am. So basically, if this is saying if I call make grid with 3 and 3, right? So the first 3 will be num columns, and the second 3 will be num rows. Okay? So 3 columns and 3 rows. I have to make a grid like this. So just so everyone's aware, that means, nope. That means I'll be making an array that looks like this. Usually when you deal with multidimensional arrays, you want to put the inner arrays on new lines so it's very clear to you, okay? So if I have a make grid of 3 of 3, I should get something that looks like this, right? Starting at 1, going until the end. Is everyone clear on what the question wants?
Yes.
Cool. So if I have num calls and num rows, right? 3 and 3. The first thing we could do is we could say let grid equal an empty array, right? Because that's what will be our thing. So when you think of grids in general, you know that you have to make one, you're usually going to have to do a double for loop if you're going to have to make the individual columns. And always the outer for loop should be referencing the rows, okay? And the inner for loop, when you're actually placing the 1 and the 2 and the 3, those will be referencing the columns, okay? Let me show you what I mean. So if I say for let I equals 0, I is less than num rows, I plus plus. So we will loop until I is no longer less than the number of rows. So if there's 3 rows, we will do 3 iterations, right? 0, 1, then 2, then it's 3, and then we'll stop, right? That's how many rows. So that will get us 1, 2, 3, right? So how do we get the actual array with the numbers inside? It's pretty simple, honestly. First we have to make the row, right? It's going to be another array, and then we do another for loop. For let j equals 0. You have to change it from j because, well, actually in this case you don't have to change it from j. But it's always better to do that because if you don't, then you have 2 things that are called I, right? And then if you're just reading your code, you're not really sure if I was to say for let I equals 0, I is less than num columns, I plus plus. If I like console.log I right here, if I'm just reading your code, I'm reading your program, I would be confused. You know, you have all these I's, and there's too many code blocks for me to realize what this I is going to be, right? So usually if you're doing nested for loops, which in rare occasions you would be doing, change it to j. So now I know that this I is referencing the outer for loop, right? So I'll change it to j, and now since I'm starting j at 0 in the same fashion as I started I from 0, but I want the 1 and the 2 and the 3, right? So all we have to do is row dot push j plus 1, right? So now,
What's the plus 1 root?
if j starts at 0, 0 plus 1, we get 1, right? And that's how we get this 1.
Ah, yeah.
So the whole time we're looping through this, I is still 0, right? So we're still at the first row, which is an empty array. So we will loop through, we're not looping through anything. That's like a habit of me talking, right? We're just looping up into a certain point and changing j now. So we do j 0, so we do j plus 1, 1, and we push it into this empty array. So now we have an array with just the 1. Then j increments, we get the 2, right? Because when j is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. So then we put the 2 in here, we put the 3 in there, and then this loop stops, right? Because number of columns is 3. So We hit 3. So now rows should look like this. Just one array of 1, 2, 3. Now that we have this whole array, we can do, I'll just leave that there. We can do grid.push that whole row. You can feed push an entire array, okay? That's fine. You can do that, okay? Then you return grid. So if I console.log make grid of 3, 3 in the console, we get, well, it is it, but it just looks bad, okay? See? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Any questions? This is standard making grids, okay? This is standard. Yeah.
Why is it different J plus 1 with J plus plus?
J++ will be reassigning the value of J. So at the end of the for loop, we do J++, right? Because we want to increment J, because we want the loop to stop. If I did in any for loop, with I even, if inside of the for loop I did I++ somewhere inside of the for loop, inside of the code block, as well as in the definition of the for loop, that means we'll be skipping a number every time. Because in the for loop we'll do, okay, let's say I is 0, right? In the for loop we would do I++. Okay, now I is 1. Then we make it to the end of the for loop, and then the for loop itself will increment again. So then it'll go to 2. You know? So at the start of every code, we would get 1 off. So you see 0, 2, 0, 2, 0, 2. That's not what we want, right? In very rare situations inside of a for loop, you would want to manually change I. Sometimes you would maybe want to go back one if you found some. It depends on the problem you're solving, but usually you wouldn't want to do that.
What about the plus equals?
This is shorthand, but not really for plus equals, so it would essentially do the same thing, right? Except I don't think plus equals returns anything, does it? Oh, it does. It's just different. See, plus actually returns the value of J before it's incremented. It returns the value and then it increments it. So the return value of J++ is still going to be what it was before it was incremented. So that's why it's 0, 2. Whereas J plus equals 1, you get the incremented value and you get 1, 3. And that's why you see the 3 here. Okay, this is confusing though. Don't think about this. Right? J is 0. We want 0 plus 1, so you just do J plus 1. You don't want to reassign J. Okay? Plus and plus equals reassigns the value. Is everyone clear on that? Is everyone clear on that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any other questions with this grid? Any questions? Nothing? All right. So what was the other one? My slice. My slice, my slice, my slice, my slice, my slice. So I think in a previous workshop, you guys did my slice, right? You did something similar. Something a little similar, right? So my slice should take original array. It should take the start index, and it should take the end index, okay? So if you guys remember, how slice works, if you don't pass in anything, it goes from the beginning until the end, right? If you pass in just one argument, it starts there and goes to the end. If you pass in 2 arguments, it starts and stops, right? So we have to take into, right away, you guys should be thinking, okay, what happens if we don't pass in these values? We can just say equals 0, and then we could say here equals original array dot length minus 1. Okay? Is anyone confused by what I'm doing? This is the same thing as, this is ES6 syntax. This is the same thing as saying in here, if start index is equal to undefined. Start index equals 0. Except I can just put this equals 0 here inside of the function's definition. Right? Right?
Yes.
Cool. So, and you see the same thing here. The end, we go until the end, so the end would be original dot length. Minus, oh no, not minus 1, not minus 1, excuse me. Because, if you guys remember, the stopping place for slice is not inclusive, right? The index we give stop, that element at that index will not be included in our result. So, we can go until the length, right? And the length is always 1 more than the last index, right? If you have an array of 3 things, the length is 3, but the last thing is at index 2, right? So, let's just treat this as normal. So we can say, let results array equal an array, right? So then we could do for let I equal start, and then we could do I is less than end. I plus plus. Then we could do result array dot push original array at I. And then we can return result array. Right? This is how you guys did it before. And I hope that you guys started this way, okay? Because there's a trick to this specific question. Because actually the slice method takes negative numbers. Okay? It takes negative numbers, and if it's -1, it will be the last element in the array. -2 will be the second to last element of the array, right? So we can actually pass in negative numbers into here to end and to start. But if these were negatives, then this for loop wouldn't work, right? However, instead of dealing with all of this really ridiculous logic of, oh, if it's negative, then let's do another for loop and start from the back and do this way. No. What if we just changed that negative number and translated it into what position it should be if it were positive, right? Because -1 is original array dot length minus 1, right? -2 is original array dot length minus 2. So we can say here if start IDX is less than 0, we could say start IDX is going to be equal to original array dot length plus start IDX. Quick math, right? If it's -1, it will be the length. The length is, let's say it's an array of 3, right? The length is 3. If it's -1, we want to start at the end, right? The last index is index 2. 3 plus -1 is 2. Right? Right? Okay. So, and we can do the same thing if end index is less than 0. What do? End index is going to be equal to original array dot length plus end index. Smooth, nice and clean, okay? We take this case, this edge case, of it being a negative number, and we say, I don't want to think about doing reverse loops. Let's just make that negative number a positive number because it has a counterpart. Because that's kind of what JavaScript does, okay? Because if I pass in -1 into slice, there is no index -1, right? So we have to do some kind of math to make that the end, because it's going from the end. And this is how you do it, pretty much. It's tricky, right? Yeah.
If you use dot slice, you can use negative numbers now?
Yeah. Play around with that if you want. I always recommend playing around with things. That's how you really understand what's going on. But yeah, it's my solution. Mine. Any questions? How are you guys feeling about arrays now? Arrays are pretty easy to work with, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Professor, I have a question on the second. If it is original array, let's say it's 3 plus 3, that's 6.
Wait, what?
And the second if, right? If it is negative number,
Okay.
so that would be original array, then 3, and then you're saying plus ITX, so that would be another 3. What how do you calculate?
If I pass in -3?
Well,
If I pass in -3, and the length is 3, then it would be 0, right?
oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
And, I mean, I think like if you pass in negative numbers that go out of context, then the loop just wouldn't run or something like that. I don't know. Any questions before we dive into objects? Did anyone look at the Sudoku project? Nice. Look at it. I don't care if you do it or not, but it will only help if you do it, okay? If you think you don't have time to do it right now, then do it later, okay? But don't not do it. Do it later. I think it will really help, okay? Because it's a little bit more challenging. And you could send me or Sulamita your results through a REPL or a file through Slack whenever you want. Somebody from like 6 months ago just sent me her Sudoku project like 5 minutes ago. So it's not a big deal. I don't care. Send it to me whenever you want. I will look at it. I'll write comments on it, and I'll get it back to you. Okay? Sound good? Dope.
Just to bring up your question from Slack.
Oh, yeah. So let's say I have this array, example array. You guys don't really have to know this, but this is kind of nice to use. Let's have that. I have example array. And I have it equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Let's say I wanted to make a copy of this array without using slice. I can say let's copy array equal a new array dot 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 example array. Ooh, what's that? So this is the spread operator. If I just did this doesn't make any sense, and you will get a syntax error. This is bad. So if you do the dot dot dot, that's spreading out an array. That's basically visualize this in your head. That's removing the square brackets and taking all of the values inside and throwing them like into empty space. But you can't assign like 5 things to one variable, right? Because when you remove these brackets of this array, there are 5 numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't do let variable equal 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4. You can't do that, okay? Can be assigned one thing. So we take the spread and we put it in a new array, like that. And let's say I wanted, so then if I console.log, copy array, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is another way to put things into an array without using dot push, right? What if I just did comma 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? I spread out everything that was in this array, and then I add something else over here.
I think, what about if it's a comma minus one? Will it take a 1?
No. If I did comma minus 1, then I'm just putting in a negative 1 into the array, right? Like I'm literally saying let copy array is going to be a new array, right? I did that first. Let copy array is going to be an empty array, right? And then I want to fill this empty array with everything that was in example array. So you literally spread it out. Nope. Think of it as removing these brackets, taking all of these things, and putting them as they were in here, okay? You don't really need to know this, but just know the spread operator exists, and it is ES6, okay?
Would you use it in a for loop? Like for,
I don't know about that. I mean, you could if you wanted to. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is just a way. No one cares if you know this, but it's cool, and someone might. Okay. Anyways, that's the spread operator. I feel like the spread operator looks kind of weird because it doesn't make sense with like how everything else you've been taught lines up syntactically, but it gets like really easy to use once you get used to it, okay? You can also use spread operator with objects, okay? So, today's topic is objects. Objects are completely different than anything else we've learned so far, okay? Because they are complex. Right? So they're not like Booleans or numbers. And they are not ordered. That means they do not have indexes. There's no index 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's in an order. So they are not like arrays or strings. So, but before I get into what objects actually are, how do we write an empty object? Let's say const my first object, open, close, curly brace. This is how you write an object. This is the syntax for an object. Everything that goes inside here will be inside of my first object, okay? So, what should I show you? So let's say if I console.log type of object. Type of my first object, sorry. What would I get? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So this is the problem with using type of when using arrays and null, because those also return object, right? But the type of object is just an object. So when I say it doesn't have indexes, what could it possibly be? Key value pairs, okay? Key value pairs. So let's make const person, right? This object is going to be called person. It will have a height key with the value of 6.3. Okay? This is one key value pair inside of the person object. The key is height and the value is 6.3. Okay? Does this make sense? Okay? So, just like arrays can store anything, any kind of data, right? Objects can store any kind of data too. We can have a name property that stores a string, right? We can have a... We could say...
alive, yes or no?
Is alive. we could say false. I'm dead inside. No, I'm just kidding. I'm alive. True. So
It's a reach.
so we can have like hobbies, and it can be an array. We can have teaching. No. Sleeping. That's a nice hobby of mine. So, as you can see, a person, unlike arrays, has no indexes. They're not ordered, right? However, they do have these key value pairs. How do you access things inside of an object?
Can we decimal?
You can. That is one way. So if you know the exact name of a key, you can do person.height. That gives us 6.3, okay? If you were to act, you can also use bracket notation. But if I do height like that, JavaScript will say, whoa, what's this? Height is not defined. Where's this 1, 2 coming from? Whatever. It says height is not defined. That's because JavaScript is trying, you know, like if you had a variable, like off the top of my head, I, and you try to access an index of an array and you pass in that I, JavaScript is saying, what is this I? It's a variable, and inside of that variable is stored a number. So it's really doing the array at the number to find the index. JavaScript is doing the same thing here with this bracket notation. Bracket notation is no different with objects, right? I don't have a variable that is called height anywhere, right? If I did let height equal height as a string, then it works. Why does that work? It's because, remember this, all keys inside of objects are actually strings. Okay? And when I'm defining an object like this, I can do this. I can put the string like that. It still works. It's the same thing because all keys in objects are strings. However, JavaScript lets you omit these. Okay? You do have to put these in quotes if you have weird characters inside, like this space, right?
Even underscore?
Huh?
Even an underscore or a hyphen?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. So if you put them in actual, you can put anything you want as a key. Well, don't quote me on anything. There must be some kind of limit. But if you use these weird special characters, you do have to put them in quotes because otherwise, no one knows what's going on. It's trying. It just doesn't make sense, right? So it knows that this is a string and this is going to be. You know what I mean? So that's how you access things in an object. Any questions? Any questions so far on objects? Yeah.
So the double dots is like saying equal?
The colon? Yeah. When you define an object like this. Like when you define an array like this, it would be like array 0, it'd be an array like a string, then comma, then the next one, right? So this is also has commas as well at the end of a key value pair. But you define the key value pair, you define the difference between the key and the value with the colon. Okay? So how do you add things to an object, right? There's no dot push method or something like that, you know? So how do we do something? What property should I add to person? No, seriously, what property should I add to person? Pets. Pets will also be an array, okay? Person at pets equals an array and it's going to be empty because I don't have any. And then I'll console.log person. And you can see that the pets key value pair is inside person. And it's that simple to add things into an object, okay? Person at this key, person bracket this key equals whatever you want the value to be. In this case, it will be an empty array. I can also do this by saying person dot last name equals Listenek, okay? So if I console.log person again, you see my last name is Listenek, okay? Bracket and dot notation. There is a key difference here, okay? And you can see the key difference here is the quotes. Person, inside of the brackets, right? If you don't put a variable in there and you want this word to actually be the key, it has to be wrapped in quotes if you're using bracket notation. Dot notation is very different. Dot notation takes everything to the right and makes it a string. Okay? So let's say I had const last name equal to wait, how's the best way I could show you this? Const my var equal to Listenek, right? So if I did my var here, it would be my var, you know? It literally takes everything that's to the right of it and makes it the key, even though this is equal to Listenek. Whereas if I did it with bracket notation, oh wait, that's what I was trying to do, my bad. Oh, what am I, So if I use bracket notation, you can see last name here, right? Because it evaluates what my var is, and it's the string last name. So person at last name, the last name will be the key, and we'll assign it this string Listenek. But if I do dot my var, you can see that it's actually my var, okay? It does not evaluate the variable. It doesn't do that because of dot notation. It doesn't think this is a variable. It thinks this will be the key because of the dot, okay? This is very important, and it tricks people all the time, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so you can also, how you add is also how you edit, right? So as you can see, is alive is true, right? So I could say person dot is alive equals false. And if I console.log person, I get is alive is now false. But I thought setting the equals is how you add, right? It doesn't matter because keys in an object are unique, okay? So basically, when I say person dot is alive over here, as well as person at pets is an empty array, it's the same syntax, but it's doing the same thing. It looks and sees what's there, and no matter if it is or isn't, we put this value there. Even if this was an array, if I did dot pets equals false, even if that was an array before, we reassign that key's value to be false. We can change things like that. Very much so how arrays work, right? You can mutate arrays. Array at 0, if it was a number before, you can make it a Boolean, or you can make it another array. So objects like arrays are mutable, right? Any questions? Cool.
Can you change the, I don't know if this makes sense, change the key? You want to change the name of the key?
You would just have to put in another key.
Would that be getting rid of the existing? Like if I wanted to.
No, so if you wanted to delete it, you would,
So there's no like replacing. You
no,
have to delete and add new.
no, I don't think so.
Maybe unless you use the variable, my var equal last name, and then you add it.
Wait, say that again?
Like, remember on the second comment, that line?
This?
The second comment, that one. And then you add it, and then it will replace the next one.
And then I what?
And then you will add the property to the person object.
Yeah,
That would be the third commented line.
this one?
That one, yes, right? And then you would add that to the object,
Yeah.
right? And then in the next one that she's asking, you can replace.
Wait, what do you, no, wait, what do you mean? No.
Because since it is as a variable,
Yeah, this is a key value pair here. I added my var into there, and I
Right.
set it equal to a string.
and later if you want to replace it, you instead of last name, oh no, actually it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, you can do that here.
Change the function, right? Like say my bar equals first name.
Well, to change the key, you would have to change this and then this, right? Where you assign it.
Yeah.
So, no, you can't just replace a key value pair. You have to take the key. You have to take the key. You can delete it though. You know, that's the thing. Using the delete keyword. Okay. So to delete this, let me comment this back out. If I wanted to delete, so if I do delete person.pets and I console.log person. Oh, my bad. As you can see, there's no longer any pets, right? Here, let me get rid of this so it's more clear. So I added, so person.pets was false here because I changed it to false. It was an array up here, well over here or whatever. And then I said use the delete keyword and I deleted person.pets. That removes the entire key value pair, okay? If you ever wanted to do that. So, as you can see, objects, you might say, why are they useful, right? Because you can't loop through them in an order and define certain things. However, objects, it gives you more description as to what is going on inside of this data. Like, I call this person, okay? And then we have height, name, is alive, right? You can already expect what those values data is going to be. Height is probably going to be a number. Name is probably going to be a string. And is alive will probably be a Boolean, right? Yes or no. Correct? So it's more descriptive, right? And when I say you can't loop through an object, I'm lying because you can loop through an object. It's just a different loop. You don't use a for loop because for loops are used for incrementing a variable and using that variable to access different indices in an array, right? But there are no indexes in objects. So we can use something called a for in loop. Let me just get rid of this. So you start off the same way you would a regular for loop, right? However, instead of let I equal this, I is you do let a variable name, and this could be anything, it could be that, but what it's going to be will be a key in the object you're looping through, the person, okay? So if I console.log, the key is key, and then I console.log, the value is value. What I get No. Oh, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And the value is person at key. I don't know why I have no idea why I did that. You can see we go through that entire object and we have access to everything. The for in loop loops through an object from start to finish by itself. We put the key of that object and we store it into this key, right? This can be anything. This can be human trait, right? But I have to remember to change it here. Nope. What the hell? Huh. So this is also a variable, kind of like I, right? I, J, whatever. You can name it whatever you want. Usually, I put it as key, because it's the key in the object. That's what it is. Sometimes it makes more sense to call it something else. Like, let's say you're looping through an array of objects, and they all represent different days of the week, or something. Like, they're all schedules for days of the week, right? So, instead of let key, it would be like let day, or let current day, you know? It depends on what the object's keys are. So you can make, back to lesson 1, variable naming is important. As you can see, I changed this to human trait because, ignore this ridiculous thing, but these are all like traits of me, right? So, as you can see, you can access every key each time using this variable, human trait, right? The key is height, the key is name, the key is alive, the key is hobbies, right? But the value is accessed using this person object at that key with bracket notation. Okay? What would happen if I changed this to dot notation? What would happen? What do you think I'll get? Won't be an error. It's just going to be undefined over and over again. Same thing that happens when you try to access an index in an array that doesn't go that far. If you try to access a key inside of an object that where the key doesn't exist, its value is just undefined. But human trait is defined. I just did it before using bracket notation. Dot notation is not the same as bracket notation. Dot notation does not evaluate the variable, okay? It takes everything to the right of the dot and makes it a string and then looks for that. So the whole time where we see the values undefined, the values undefined, the values undefined, what JavaScript is doing, it's looking for a key inside of the object called human trait. Okay? Does that make sense? You guys sure?
Can you say that one more time?
Like, if you did brackets, right? Put this down here. Let me comment this out. If I did brackets, right? Person at human trait, comma, person dot human trait. Because of bracket notation, I look at the person object. Inside the bracket, JavaScript will see what is inside there. And it sees that it's a variable, and it will evaluate that variable to find out what it is. So what's the value of this variable, human trait? Let human trait. The for in loop puts in the key every single time. So that's what the for in loop does. It puts in the key into that variable every time. So we can see person at that key, like first it's height, then it's name, then it's is alive, because we can see the values, right? But the dot notation does not evaluate this key, okay? It doesn't evaluate it. Instead, it looks inside of the person for a key value pair where the key is literally human trait. Literally. Okay? Like, if I put human trait over here, and I did not a number, don't forget your comma, and we go back, you see NaN every time, right? Because I console.log person at human trait, person dot human trait. Person at human trait, you see changes, 6.3, Marco, true, that array, and then the actual thing, not a number. Person dot human trait accesses the same key value pair every time. So, inside for in loops, don't use dot notation, okay? Because it's wrong. It's wrong, okay? Because it doesn't evaluate variables. And for in loops use variables to capture the key. And the key is always changing. It's dynamic. It changes every loop, every iteration. So if you use the dot notation, you will get the same thing every single time. And it will probably mostly be always undefined. Because you probably will call it key. And very rarely will you see a key in an object, right? Called key.
If you put quotes around console.log person, around human trait in that line, would it evaluate the same as?
Exactly, because now we are not evaluating any variable, we are looking for the actual key human trait. Because bracket notation is the same, can be used like dot notation, however, it has to be wrapped in quotes. Because why? What are all keys in objects?
Strings.
Yeah. Nice. Does that make sense though? Like, if it's not strings, if it's not a string, then JavaScript's like, what the hell is this? We gotta evaluate it. We have to find out what this is, right? But dot notation does not make that step. Dot notation is quick. It's like, all right, look for this, whatever, you know? Any questions? Very weird and new stuff, right? It's okay though. Objects are actually really easy to work with because they are very literal, okay? So here's a few methods that you can use. So let's say for some reason you wanted all of the keys in an array, or you wanted all of the values in an array. There are some methods you can use off the global object. Object.keys pass in that object. And object dot, you guessed it, values, you pass in the person object, right? So as you can see, we get this array, these arrays, right? And you see this array is all of the keys in an array. This one is all of the values in an array. This could be extremely useful. This could also be really unnecessary, and you might try to use this in places where you just don't need to use it, okay? And it also might trip you up. However, the method exists, you guys need to be aware of it, and it could be really useful, okay? Any questions? Did I get everything? Cool. Any questions? Before I go into some slides. No one has any questions? All good? Objects easy? Easier than arrays? No? Yeah, no, everyone's always like, yeah, I don't like objects. I like objects. Okay, so let's get into the presentation. So, objects. I'll talk about what it is actually, why it's useful, what the type of is, accessing and adding, whatever. The in operator, the for in loop, object.keys, and nested arrays and objects. So what is an object? An object is an unordered collection of key value pairs. Very literal, right? You just saw what that means. Like arrays, objects store values, but instead of storing them in numeric indices, objects store values in string keys. Okay? Like arrays, when we do array at 12, we get the value that's at index 12. It's stored at that index. In an object, we'll do object at quotes name, and we find the value that's stored at that string name. Okay? They're all strings. Okay? Always strings. Let my array equal value 1. So, as you can see, let my array, we have two things inside of this array, two strings, value 1, value 2. My object, we have two key value pairs inside of this object, key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2. Console.log my array at 0, console.log my object at key 1. You could see value 1, value 1. Right? New syntax. Get used to it, okay? So, consider representing Pusheen the cat as an array. Pusheen is an array. Pusheen, 7, grain tabby. An array is a good place to hold an ordered list of values, but it doesn't store any information about what those values represent. In objects, string keys allows objects to store more information about the values within it, right? Let Pusheen equal name Pusheen, age 7, color grain tabby, right? This is more humanized data. This makes more sense now. Versus before, what is that? You know? It's just an array of values, you know? Now we know, okay, this is the name, this is the age, this is the color.
Okay, I have an array, and when I'm looking for it, why would I care to know the name of the reference to the actual value? Like if I want to display something, I just want to display that this is pushing 7 grain tabby. When would I need to display also the name, the age, and the color?
One reason, you know, there's millions of reasons, but one really good reason is, let's say you're making a project and you're getting a lot of data back from the back end, you know, a lot of data, and you display different things in your application. And when you're doing your code, when you're writing code yourself, if you do dot name off of an object, you know that it's going to be the name. If there's 400 things in an array, and you have oh, this over here is going to be array at 397, this is going to be array at 212. That doesn't say anything when you're reading code, right? Versus this, it's okay, at the title will be data.title. We know what that is. We know it's going to be a string, and we know it's going to be the title. We don't have to remember that the title is stored at index 177. Also, we don't have to loop, if, let's say we have an array, and everything's a string, but we're looking for one number, but we don't know where the index is, right? That means we have to loop through it every single time. Whereas if we have the key, it's constant lookup, right? Objects are constant lookup. You can just grab it whenever. This is unordered. Yeah. So, type of object is object. Cool. So, creating an object, you create a new object using curly braces. An object's keys are always strings, but you can actually omit the strings when you create an object like this, okay? So if you do just name colon, it's syntax, colon, okay, not semicolon, colon, name colon, Pusheen, comma. Next key value pair, age, colon, 7, right? And these can be any data value, okay? But you can omit the strings here, even though these are strings, okay? They are strings, but you don't have to write the quotes. No one likes writing quotes. It's always annoying. Cool. So if we have the same object of Pusheen, use bracket notation to access a value. pass a string into the brackets that corresponds with a key in that object. Console.log pushing at string name, at string age, at string color, at not a key in this object. We're passing all these strings in here, and we're going to look for the keys, right? So we get pushing 7 grand tabby and undefined. If you try to look up a key that is not inside of that object, the result will always be undefined. Okay? Cool? Does this make sense? Any questions on bracket notation when you pass in strings? The string will be the key you're looking for, okay? You can also pass in equations or variables into bracket notation. Let key to check equals the string name. Key to check, we get pushing, right? Because it evaluates what this variable is. Pushing at bracket at the string COL plus the string OR. So we do that equation first, we concatenate those two strings so we get color, we get grain tab. Does this make sense? You can do this with arrays too. You could do like at I plus 1, right? I plus 1 will always give you the next thing, right? It evaluates I plus 1 before it looks for the index in the array.
It's that last one got me confused during the pre-lecture. Like why does that do that?
Well, like, so back to the I plus 1 thing, right? If you're at an array and you have I, right? And I is 0. But if you do array at I, then you get the 0th index. And if you do array of I plus 1, you get the first index, right? So it does the equation before it looks up. It sees, okay, what does this equation equal? I plus 1 equals 1. So now we do array at 1. So here we have, since objects as keys are strings, so the thing that goes in the bracket should be a string. So if we do this string, COL, plus the string OR, you would get COLOR, right? Color. Correct? Like if you just did like let my variable equal COL plus OR, you get color, right? So it does this concatenation, it does this equation first. So then we have pushing at color. And pushing at color is grain tab.
Is this ever applied in real life?
I mean, I don't know why you would do it, but you can.
Okay.
What about changing the name, like an example in real life? Like the name was pushing and then we create the other variable called key to check. Like when would we do that?
Oh, like this?
Yeah.
I just showed you before in the for in loop, right?
No, but I mean, like we could have used console log name and
Yeah, you could. You could, yeah, for sure.
just like that example in real life where we would change the name.
Well, in very rare cases, will you just have random strings where you would just put in random like strings, Usually everything you care about somewhere in your project will be stored in a variable, right? Like think about it. When you're writing all of these, when you're doing all of these workshops, you're solving all these problems, and you need something that you know you'll use later, you're going to put it in a variable right away, right? So let's say I wanted to access something in machine like once and then add it like an array. Like let's say the value is an array, and let's say we did that dot push, and then we did some math and did that dot push then again. And then up here we did let thing I'm pushing to equal this string. Then instead of changing in 25 places, I could change it up here and it's changed in 25 places, right? It is very useful to do this, okay? Like an example like this, it doesn't make any sense, but you'll see.
So this is JSON. All of it.
Yes, sort of. It looks like JSON, but it's not.
Well, without the assignment for that.
Okay, so let pushing equal the object that we've all been using, and then we say let key to check equals name. So let's say dot name, dot age, dot color, dot key to check. we don't have to put quotes in here, but you see when we do dot key to check, we get undefined. It's because dot notation takes everything to the right and makes it a string. So here we look up dot name, and we get the name. Dot age, we get the age, right? Age, color. But where in this object is key to check? It's not there, right? So we get undefined. And that's the offside of using dot notation. It doesn't evaluate variables before checking the object. Right? So when you add things, you can do pushing at the string sister, pushing dot brother, equals storm equals pet, and then we have them in the object. Very simple to add things, right? But what are we really doing? We're saying whatever, if it wasn't there or it is there, it is the same thing. If there was already a key called brother in there, whatever it was, it is now pip, okay? Because keys are unique. They have to be unique. So as you can see, we do the same thing here. So now we say let Pusheen, we do Pusheen at age is now going to be equal to 8. Then we do Pusheen dot age plus plus. So the age is 9, right?
Is there a way to protect your things from getting changed?
Not in JavaScript. No, not in JavaScript. There's like a data structure in Python that's kind of like an object that's immutable, but no, I don't think JavaScript has these things. There's a map object, which is an ordered object, and there's a set, which is only uniques, key values, I think. It has to be like a unique thing. But no, I don't think there's anything that can prevent you from changing something. If it's there, you could change it. So like I showed you before, you use the delete keyword to delete things from the object. You literally put delete space and then Pusheen at age. Like you're trying to access the value, right? Like Pusheen.color will give you grand tabby. So if you do delete Pusheen.color, it deletes the whole key value pair, okay? Honestly, you rarely will need to delete key value pairs because if it is there, if there's an extra thing that you didn't want in your object, it's fine. It's not hurting anything. It's not bothering anyone. It's there. It'll only bother you if you try to access it or loop through it, okay? But you can delete things like so. Any questions? So the in operator you can use to check to see if something is in the object. So if I do console.log name in Pusheen, sadness in Pusheen, it returns true or false. So you do the key you're looking for, space, then in. This is a keyword in JavaScript. And then the object you're looking at. This will return a Boolean whether that key exists inside of the object or not. Okay? And the in operator is used in for in loops, right? So for in loops are new, right? They look like for loops, however, they're written differently. You can say that it's a little easier. So you say for let key, you define a variable. Usually we say key because that's the value that's going to be stored in that variable, the key in the object every time. Console.log, Pusheen's key is Pusheen at key. So we do for let key in the object we will be looping through, okay? So the key will change every single time, and it will always be a key inside of the object here, okay? So as you can see, we have Pusheen's key name is Pusheen at key, Pusheen. So to get the key, if you want the key, all you have to do is write key inside of here. But to get the value, Pusheen at key, okay? Because Pusheen at a key will give you the value. Does that make sense?
If key itself is an object, it'll print out the whole, like, Pusheen's family is sister, name, like, blah, blah, mom, blah, blah. blah, blah. Like, cause they were doing nested objects,
So like if there was so if, let's say like we had comma family
Right.
colon object,
yeah.
it would just be an object. And you would see the whole object. As you can see here, when you use dot notation, you get undefined 3 times. Because what does the dot do? It takes everything to the right and makes it a string and looks up that key inside of the object. So there is no key in here that is called key. So when you try to access a key value pair by a key that doesn't exist, you get undefined every time. That's why dot notation is never really used inside of foreign loops, okay? Does that make sense? There's a lot of information, right? Yeah. So I showed you object.keys before. You have the global object, and it has a keys method, .keys. You invoke it, and you pass in an object. And what you get is an array of all of the keys, okay? Similarly, .values, you would pass in the object as well, and you would get an array of all of the values. Use them if you need them. Yeah.
So here you could put in an index. Here you could say object.keys pushing I or something.
No. Object.keys just takes an entire object. So I guess
Or
like,
do object-
no, I'm sorry. So like you could do object.keys pass in Pusheen, then after the closing parenthesis, yeah, you can do like @0 and it will give you name,
Okay.
you know? Because it evaluates what that is first and then it accesses it using fragment if you wanted to do that. But if you do it a million times, @0 might not always be named because objects aren't ordered, right? 999,000 times out of a million, though, will probably be ordered. But you cannot rely on that. So if you have nested arrays, we can do Pusheen dot colors @0, okay? Does this make sense to everybody? Like how you access nested arrays, like grid @0 @1, right? Will give you that number inside of the grid. Console.log Pusheen dot colors. What is dot colors? Dot colors is an array. That array @0, that array @1 gets you the inner things.
Professor, so
Yeah.
if you take pushing that color at the index 0, right, grab that, and if you place it on the previous slide, when she was asking, is it allowed to, let's say, to grab this pushing that color @0, came to the previous slide, and see just the value for that particular index right here on the console.log.
No. So these are like separate things. Like this before, like object.keys, I would pass in Pusheen, I would get an array of name, age, and colors. Right? So if I have an array as a value here, I can access that, I can access the individual values inside of that inner array like this. You can also reassign this gray to be orange by doing Pusheen.colors @0 equals orange. Because you can mutate arrays, right? Object.keys will only give you the keys in an array of an object. That's all it is used for, okay? That's why I always tell people, like, yes, this can be useful, but like, not always, okay?
So what about if you, if after the colors comma, you have family, right? And then.
After
then you
colors
back-
what?
on the within the object, right? So after the colors, right,
And
and you
family.
add a new property, called family,
Yeah.
and then you pass the object,
Okay.
right, of all the other, array, whatever value. How would you read family's data from?
If it was an object within an object, it would be Pusheen.family.brother. Pusheen dot family dot brother, Pusheen.
Fi-
Yeah, and then add 0. Like if he has 5 brothers, you know, the Pusheen dot family dot brother at 1. You know, you can chain this. If you have like 25 nested objects, you do dot this dot that dot 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 dot. You know.
But isn't that is there another way to do that?
No. Any questions? So, as I was just explaining, if we have siblings over here and we have and siblings is another object with 2 key value pairs inside. We have sister, which is a string Stormy, and brother, which is a string Pip. We do Pusheen dot siblings dot sister, and we get Stormy. Pusheen dot siblings dot brother, we get Pip. You chain the dots off each other, okay? We're using dot notation because we know that the string key is siblings and that the string key inside of there is sister and brother, right? Let's say we did Pusheen dot siblings. Let's say we did Pusheen dot family dot sister. Like we thought this was family, but it's actually siblings. You would get a nasty error in the console saying cannot read property sister of undefined, right? Because Pusheen at family doesn't exist anymore. Pusheen dot family, this doesn't exist, so it's undefined, right? So then you do undefined dot sister, not.
And if you skip a step, like Pusheen dot sister,
Pusheen dot sister just gives you undefined because there is no key inside of Pusheen sister, right? The sister key lives inside of the value of the key siblings. Okay? Like if you had an array with one array inside of it, and that inner array had 5 things, if you did the outer array at index 5, you would get undefined, right? You have to go into that inner array. Crazy, right? So, as a recap, why are objects useful? What are they? What the type is? Accessing, adding, changing, deleting, in operator, for and loop, object.keys, nested arrays, and objects. What do you guys think of that?
Mess.
Yeah, it's a mess, right? Objects are very, very different than arrays. Different than strings, different than anything, okay? And they're also complex, okay? So that whole, like empty array, triple equals empty array is false. That applies to objects as well, because they're also complex data types, okay? And I know this was a lot of information, but I'll post the REPL, go through it while you're doing the workshop, go through the material on the slides, the material tabs, go through the slides, and you'll be okay, all right? Just new stuff. So take a 5-minute break and I will slack out videos.